So hi everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. And I'm Reena Dayal. I'm the host for the Thought Integrator video podcast series. Today is the first session and we are very glad to have Christian Kromme with us. He's a futurist and somebody who's very experienced in the industry working with people and organizations, helping them deal with the changes that come from technology. And so, Christian, a very warm welcome to you. I'm very looking forward to our conversation. I understand that right now you are based out of an island, right? You just recently shifted there.
Yeah. We moved to the Caribbean. So me and my family went to the Caribbean, to Bonaire, and it's near Venezuela. And it's very hot here. And we live near the beach, and it's a wonderful way of living here. So we really enjoy it. And thank you for having me on your show.
You're most welcome. And tell us a little bit more about what prompted this move, right? I mean, I know you're a big nature fan. So this is to get closer to nature?
Yeah, basically. I really like to be in nature. I got a lot of inspiration when I'm in nature, when I'm in the sea, when I'm in the water, when I'm doing sports. And on this island, you're surrounded by nature.
So hi everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. And I'm Reena Dayal. I'm the host for the Thought Integrator video podcast series. Today is the first session and we are very glad to have Christian Kromme with us. He's a futurist and somebody who's very experienced in the industry working with people and organizations, helping them deal with the changes that come from technology. And so, Christian, a very warm welcome to you. I'm very looking forward to our conversation. I understand that right now you are based out of an island, right? You just recently shifted there.
Yeah. We moved to the Caribbean. So me and my family went to the Caribbean, to Bonaire, and it's near Venezuela. And it's very hot here. And we live near the beach, and it's a wonderful way of living here. So we really enjoy it. And thank you for having me on your show.
You're most welcome. And tell us a little bit more about what prompted this move, right? I mean, I know you're a big nature fan. So this is to get closer to nature?
Yeah, basically. I really like to be in nature. I got a lot of inspiration when I'm in nature, when I'm in the sea, when I'm in the water, when I'm doing sports. And on this island, you're surrounded by nature. You cannot escape it. The warmth, the heat is one thing that puts you in your body, but also all the animals and all the wildlife here. It's really amazing to be here, and it helps me to be more grounded, to be more human, basically. And my family enjoys this as well. It's a really nice environment to grow up for the kids. They see all kind of animals which are not in the Netherlands, where we came from originally. So it's a really nice move. And we went here also because of Corona. So today everything can be done digital. So digital events, digital conversations, doing business in a digital way. And that helps us to move to another side of the world where we can continue our work, but have a different kind of environment. So I can really advise it to everyone to make a step like this. It's really beneficial to the way of living.
Yeah, great. I think Corona has really taught us that, it is possible to work from anywhere. And in India as well, there are a lot of people who continue to work from home, from very small towns or even villages. And they've discovered that they can do that. So it'll be interesting to see how things turn out as people start coming back or companies start calling people back. So let me ask you a question. I think this is for the benefit of all the people who will be watching this show, and listening to us, is who is Christian Kromme? And how did you become a futurist? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, a good question. Christian Kromme, I'm 43 years old. I'm a father of 3 young children. I'm happily married to my wife. We live here in the Caribbean. I was born in the Netherlands, and I've lived there for 33 years. And now we moved here, and we live here for 3 months. And a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, my daughter was born. And we found out that she was very sick. She had some severe health issues. And during the search to save our daughter's life, I discovered some insights about how nature, how cells in biology within organisms work. And I saw all kinds of parallels between how biology works and how technology works, and how cells work and how sapiens work, and how organisms work and how organizations work. And so I started to write a book about it called Humanification, Go Digital, Stay Human. And after launching this book, it became an instant bestseller on Amazon.com in multiple categories. And so I started to become a well-known and frequently asked speaker all over the world. And mostly when they announce me, when I come on stage, they call me a futurist. So I thought that was a label to to put on myself, because people who want to hire me want to know more about the future, want to see patterns and trends in technology spectrum. So that's why how I became a futurist. So for the last 7 years, I've traveled all over the world, giving keynote speeches on large conferences and large companies, the Googles, the Microsofts of this world, big banks, big energy corporations, but also smaller groups of people. And since Corona, everything changed. So 2 years ago, my diary was cleaned up instantly. So all the bookings of the year were gone. So then I started to record my online master courses. So I had a dream to develop an online master classes with a lot of videos that inspire people how the future of work would look like, how the future of organizations will look like. So that was my main job in the last 2 years. And now what we see is that due to all kind of regulations, the events can go on again. Now I see a lot of bookings again, and I start to fly all over the world again. So it's a little bit returning to normal now. So
So as a futurist, right? I know the people put the label on you, right, saying that tell us about the future. Now, in your opinion, why is it important to really know about the future, especially with the kind of environment that we are living in and how technology is progressing? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, for many people, the future is the great unknown. So it's people don't know what's going to happen. And if you don't know what's going to happen, you can't embrace it. At least that's my opinion. So a lot of people are scared of change, scared of new technologies, scared of new things. And I think that's a waste, because if you are aware of what's coming on a broad outline, you can anticipate to it and you can embrace that change. And I always use the example of the tsunami, of a big tidal wave that is coming, because that's what I think that's coming in the next 5 to 10 years. A big tsunami of digitization, automation, disruption, change. And if you look at that wave from a perspective of fear, and you see it as a threat, then it doesn't help you. It doesn't help you any further. But if you look at that wave from a perspective of a surfer, and you see it as an opportunity, then you can embrace that wave, and you know exactly where and when you have to jump on the wave to leverage the power of the wave. And that's basically my mission, to help people to think like a surfer and see that next wave of change like an opportunity. And if people and organizations start to embrace it, then they can leverage the power of all this technology that's coming towards us, and they can together create a future that's more, a better future for all of us on Earth. So that's basically why I think it's important for people to know what is coming. We can't predict what's happening on a detail level, but we can predict what's happening on a society level, and that will help people to see the big hurdles, the big challenges, and start to focus on that.
Yeah, that's so true. So we can prepare, and when we understand what the future might bring, we can prepare for it. We can plan for the risks that might be there as well, right? And also leverage the opportunities. I think that's very well said. To some extent, organizations already understand this. Maybe there is a bigger need for the society and the people, whose lives get impacted to also get involved in this conversation. That's one of the reasons why I've started this podcast series, is to bring this conversation not just to the people who are already involved in preparing for the future, but get people who are at least technically aware to get more deeper into this conversation and get at their level do the preparation at their level, get involved in the conversation around policy making. What is their view on what kind of policy should be there for different kinds of future environments and so on. So thank you very much. I think that is very, very insightful. From this aspect that I just mentioned, that there is a group of people who belong to the tech industry and they sort of prepare for the future with respect to the kind of changes science and technology brings in. And then there is this rest of the rest of the people who are maybe not so aware about the technology. What do you think about the divide that exists? Do you think that the divide is real? There is a big divide between because of the complexity that science and technology brings in?
Yeah, I think there's a big gap between the tech-savvy people and the people that are not so tech-savvy. But I think that gap is narrowing. What's happening today is the technology becomes more intuitive, more easy to use. And the more intuitive technology becomes, for example, the iPad or the iPhone or the smartphone or dialogue interfaces using artificial intelligence, when technology becomes more accessible, a wider group of people starts to use it. So in the early 90s or the early 2000s, only a small group of tech-savvy people used the internet. And after that, it became more accessible via the web browser, via smartphones. And now a large part of the world is using new technologies. For example, banking. Previously, you have to go to the office to do banking, but now you can do it on your smartphone in a banking app. So I think the technology, especially when artificial intelligence becomes more powerful and more distributed, technology becomes more accessible for a very wide group of people. Also, younger children, elderly people, disabled people. So I think that gap is there, it's absolutely there, but it's narrowing in the future. And especially when we will have holographic technology like augmented reality, virtual reality, then the virtual world starts to look like the real world. And everyone is able to interact with the real world. So everyone will also be able to interact with that virtual world. And I think that will eventually, that wave will start, I think, 5 or 6 years from now in 2027. Then we will see a massive adoption of technology because it becomes so natural. It feels natural. The interaction becomes natural and everyone can start to use it and therefore can start to access very powerful knowledge and can share very powerful tools to collaborate on a global scale. So yeah, it's there, but it will be narrowing due to more intuitive technologies.
Sure. I mean, yes. I mean, with the amount of penetration that mobile devices have made, and before COVID, if somebody had said that everybody in the world will be able to continue to work remotely, right? At least a large percentage of people, there would have been a lot of doubt doubt around that. But COVID happened, and it has proven that it's possible, right? And things move at a much faster pace when the requirement is there. So. That's one way to look at it. There's another alternate viewpoint, though, Christian, which is more around if you look at how space technology, or even you talked about virtual reality, then there is this whole concept of a new generation of computing devices that are going to be there. So while from a usage perspective, the end goal is to make everything more natural from an interface perspective, but then there will be there is this viewpoint that there will be a phase during which the complexity of these new technologies is so high that the rest of there's a large portion of the population who will not be involved in that conversation, will not be able to understand. And at the same time, the time duration that will be taken for the maturity of these new technologies so that their usage becomes in a natural interface format is going to be a bit longer. So, I mean, do you see that juxtaposition of this opposite viewpoint? How do you view that?
Well, basically what I see is that the adoption of technology, the rate is increasing. So in the early days, it took 10, 15 years from the laboratory to a commercial product. Today, that is months and sometimes weeks with new co-creation like platforms and 3D printing. So I think in the future, new technologies will be easily adapted because every new wave of technology is basically standing on the shoulders of the previous wave. To give you an example, we today already have a smartphone in our pocket, at least the large amount of the population. And now we have artificial intelligence like virtual assistants and dialogue interfaces on our smartphone. So the smartphone was already there, we are used to it, and now the interface becomes even easier and simpler to use. What we also see is that technology obeys Moore's law. So every year, technology becomes cheaper and faster. So today, a smartphone is still quite expensive for a lot amount of people, but we already see new kind of smartphones, Fairphone, would only cost a couple of dollars. So I think in the end, and that's not 10 years from now, but much closer, perhaps 5 years from now, more and more people will start to use technology because it becomes easier to use, it becomes more abundant, and it becomes cheaper and more reliable. So all these factors are coming together right now. So I'm not afraid that people are, how do you say that? I think the adoption rate will go exponentially fast. And of course, we will also see a group of people who are moving away from technology. So today already here in Europe and also I think in America, you can book a resort or a hotel without Wi-Fi. So to be offline for a week. So I see also the trend. So the faster we go digital, the more people also steer in the other direction. The more we want to become human and don't want to distracted be all day by your Facebook timeline or your LinkedIn timeline of Twitter or YouTube. So I think that it pushes people also in another direction. But those people are choosing very consciously not to use technology for specific purposes. So we see many trends, but I think that's the biggest trend that we see right now. More adoption of technology, but also people who chose more purposefully to use technology and other times don't use it.
Fair enough. I mean, I think the real worry might be that, if that gap widens, and how can technology help bridge that gap, right? I mean, today, social media addiction is a real problem, right? Especially with younger kids, right? And so there is some merit in talking about digital detox. But if there's a way where that could be possible and systems were built with a lot more inbuilt ways of preventing people from getting addicted, which kind of sounds contrary to how business works, but it might be a good thing to do. So, but until that happens, there is going to be this set of people who will move away from technology. As looking at the negative side of it, do you think that there is a role that governance or some sort of I don't want to use the word regulation because that just raises a very different connotation, but some sort of governance around how technology should be used, especially with this new sets of technologies coming in around virtual reality, augmented reality, and different kinds of self-driving cars coming in, and whole lot of other areas. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think governments is always, or legislations are always way too late. So we already have drones or cars that can drive almost fully autonomous, but we don't have any regulation or rules to guide that. So I think if we wait on governments or lawmakers, then we're always behind. It's slowing down the innovation rate. So what I truly believe is that we, as a consumer, should choose very consciously what kind of technology we like. Today, we see, for example, at Facebook, with the whistleblower from the last 2 weeks, that disclosed all kind of internal research about, they knew for years that Facebook and Instagram has a very bad negative effect on children, young girls especially. The suicide rates are skyrocketing. They have all kind of eating disorders and stuff. So, but it's so profitable that they continue. Well, what I think is that technology today is used in a wrong way. I believe that technology, the purpose of technology is the same as purpose as biology. Biology puts cells together and it enables and empowers each individual cell to do what it's here for. And I think that technology should be used in the same way. Technology should unite people and empower individuals to do what they're here for, to follow their purpose. Well, today, technology is used in a different kind of way. It's used to divide people and to enslave people. So it's completely the opposite. but that's very profitable. So unless we change the financial incentive behind these companies, we won't see any change. But I see a lot of new startups right now that are using technology in a very purposeful way to unite people again. Don't polarize, don't individualize, but unite people and empower them to do what they are here for. So use technology as an augmentation to leverage the things that you are already good at. So I think that's going to happen. And Facebook has a very bad reputation. They want to change their name. They want to change their logo and all kind of stuff. But still, it's the same company after that change. So I think we need new kind of organizations that use technology in a more human way. And that's what my book is all about, humanification, to make technology as a servant of humanity and not the other way around. And that's, I think, a very important point that we should focus on in the next few years. But I think that the responsibility is with the end user. So we, in the end, decide if we use Facebook or MeWe or another kind of platform. We choose what kind of car we buy, a petrol car or an electric car. So every dollar bill, every euro, every coin that we spend is basically a vote for what kind of future that we want. So I think we are able to vote every day by what kind of platforms we use, what kind of products we buy, and what kind of services we use. So in the end, it's our responsibility and not the responsibility of the government, because the governments are always slow and always lagging reality. It's always based on models, not on reality. So I think there's some work to do there.
No, that's very well said. And I think when you talk about the ability that we have as consumers to vote on based on every decision that we take, every buying decision that we take, I think that's very powerful. I don't think people often think about it in that way, right? And I don't know if people always make that as a conscious choice, because very often technology or any gadget or anything is bought as a fad, or it's because everybody else is buying it, right? And I think those kind of conscious conversations and understanding around what it means when you end up buying something is going to change the behavior of how companies create products. I think that's a very, very valuable point. And I think that brings back the question to the fact that there is a bigger role to be played by the people on the ground as far as technology adoption is concerned. Yeah,
and we've seen this everywhere around us in the last 2 years. We see a lot of censorship on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. But we see people now are changing from WhatsApp towards Signal or Telegram. So hundreds of millions of people are switching in a few months' time. So it can happen very fast. And what I believe is that these companies have grown very fast, but they can also decline very fast if people move away to a different kind of platform. So I think it's our responsibility to make a very conscious choice. What kind of platform do I want to use? Do I appreciate privacy or the moral or the ethics that an organization is using? And that will more and more be the USP of an organization. So we treat your data in a very private way. We have all kind of ethics in design, in our applications, in our hardware. I think Apple is a good example of a company like that. So they process all the information on your device. So it's not going to the cloud where everyone can listen with your voice commands. They want to be fully circular organizations within 5 or 6 years from now, in 2030. So they're very aware of their position in the world. And I think more and more people choose their products because they respect their privacy. You are not the product because you pay for the product. And with other services like Facebook and Google, it's the opposite. It's the other way around. So it's a very conscious choice, and we should be aware of that choice. And that we have that choice every day, every single minute of the day, we have to make that choice.
Mm-hmm. So there is, there is this whole concept of, sustainability on planet Earth. And how do we make the planet more sustainable, and how do we harmonize with nature, and as we move forward towards a technological future. And then on the other hand, there is this whole speed up in the last decade or last few years of this space race, right? I mean, there was literally a gap of a few decades where there was not much progress that was happening in terms of space technology. And I think based on, of course, some of the work that Elon Musk is doing, and then a lot of private players have picked that up, and then governments seem to have space programs lined up, with this mission on to Moon and then Mars mission and so on getting discussed. There is a set of people who are not even aware, large portion of people who have no clue that this conversation is going on. First, there are probably two reasons for that. One is there's so many things to worry about here that many people just don't give too much thought to this. I personally believe that it's a great thing to do. I don't believe that, it's one versus the other. I believe, yes, we need to make a sustainable future for ourselves on this planet, but we also need to look outwards and see and, satisfy our urge as human beings for exploration and look for alternates. But having said that, the number of people on this planet who even understand what it means, once space exploration starts, and how economies are going to change, how governance is going to change, what does it mean for ordinary people, etc., especially with these recent flights, suborbital and orbital flights for space tourism, right? And suddenly space seems to have become accessible to a larger set of people. So what are your thoughts on that, right? I mean, do you think that is going to fundamentally change, bring in some other additional elements of change into the future that we see?
Well, absolutely. I think it's a natural process to go off this earth and then look into space for more opportunities to expand as a human race. My research is all based about waves of technological change. And these waves are corresponding with biological waves. And what you have seen is that we human beings have evolved or created, what kind of label you put on it, from single-celled organisms in the ocean towards a society of billions of cells that we are today. And we are now functioning as one single unit, as a body, as me, an individual, a person. I think the same will happen on a society level. So we started as single human beings in the savannas, and we started to collaborate. We started to build cities. We started to build infrastructure, information systems, automation systems, social media networks, artificial intelligence, and soon we will have holographic technology. And I believe that we will move also to a society where everyone starts to collaborate like one big unit that acts like one big system. And that's society as a whole. And I think if we reach that stage, and it will happen in the next 10, 20 years, we will go to the next stage. So that Earth is still a single unit again, and we will move to other single units, and we start to collaborate. We will start to build infrastructure, information infrastructure, social networks between planets. And then the 7 waves start all over, but on a much bigger scale. So what we see is that in our universe, these 7 waves are repeating themselves on an atomic level, on a molecular level, on a cellular level, on an organism level, but also on a society level. So when we have finished our society, we can collaborate and peacefully as one big organization, as one unit. Then we are allowed to make the next step, go to the next level, and that is an interplanetary society. So I truly believe that Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson are the frontiers to make that next step. And on a space level, I think the biggest invention for the next 10 years is not done yet. So we have to make the discoveries in the next 10 years with artificial intelligence that is 1 million times more intelligent than our own brain, for example. So we will come up with new kind of propulsion systems or new kind of rocket systems that we cannot even imagine today. So the biggest invention is still to be invented in the next 10 years. So I think we will have a new kind of economy on a planetary scale 100 years from now or 200 years from now. But it will go much faster than we think.
Yeah, so let me understand this a little bit better, and I want to dissect this a bit more so that it's we can make a lot more sense out of this. There's a lot of complex things that you just talked about. You talked about it in simple terms, but it's going to be very complex, right? And it will take a while for this to come together. So today, when we talk about connected systems, today, in several aspects, this world is, as you said, it is very connected, right? As in several ways, and technology is a big enabler for that. As we move to space, to different planets, maybe we have a base on Moon and a base on Mars, we will extend this connectedness to become a more connected society over a period of time across these locations. So that's a great thought. And I think that sort of falls in line with what you talked about in terms of the technological waves that come and how things really proceed. I have a contrary question to this, slightly different concern, if I may say. If you look at planet Earth right now, we have connectedness and we have disparity. It's all coexisting. So there is connectedness. Globally, we are all connected. I'm sitting in India, some 20,000 miles away. You are on an island, and we're having this conversation. And people from all around the world are going, listening to it and watching it, right? So I think that's the connectedness aspect of it. Yet we have boundaries across nations, and we have areas of conflict, and areas which are more peaceful and areas which are not peaceful. And then there is this whole, even from a technology perspective, every technology is not easily shared, right? I mean, not just from a business perspective, but from boundaries, boundaries across countries perspective as well, right? And everything requires a little bit of complex play around bilateral, multilateral relationships versus what happens at the global level through the United Nations or other entities, World Economic Forum, and so on. Now, when we take this to the next level, where we are talking about what's not just on Earth, but include Moon and the Mars, how is that going to play out, right? Given the history that we have as human beings, right? And while we move forward towards connectedness, we also create more divisions. So, how do you think that's going to play out?
Well, and the funny thing is, if you look at these 7 waves and how they repeat themselves in every level of our universe, what you see is it doesn't matter what you put together, if it's cells or atoms or molecules, if they start to collaborate on a larger scale, they encounter the same kind of problems. And they solve the problems in the same kind of way. Mm-hmm. So what I think is if we move to other planets, we will encounter the same kind of problems that we had in our earliest civilizations. So we started as small remote villages, and we started to create routes to have trade and to share food and all these kind of things. And these things will repeat themselves, but then on a planetary scale. So the problems are exponentially bigger and exponentially more distant or exponentially more expensive, but we will encounter the same kind of problems. And we will solve them in the same ways that we solve them here on Earth, and in the same way as the cells solve them in the biological organisms, and the same way as molecules solve them within cells. So the problems repeat over time. It's a repeating pattern, and they are only bigger. But if we grow to a more collective consciousness, then we can solve those problems way easier than we can solve the problems that we have today.
So that's a very interesting point that you made, and I want to shift the conversation a little bit to this topic of collective consciousness. I know that based on one of your earlier podcasts that I heard, that you're also somebody who believes in spirituality, right? So science as well as spirituality. That's what got me connected. That's why I reached out to you, because I'm also somebody who believes very firmly established on the science side, but also somebody who believes in spirituality and. And it's a little controversial topic to bring about on the first session of my podcast, because a lot of people who are on the science side tend to stay away from what they call, something maybe metaphysical or, whatever. What does this word spirituality mean, and so on. But having said that, it's something very important. So I want to, sort of have a little bit of a discussion around that. And how do you define spirituality, and what do you mean by collective consciousness?
Well, how do I define spirituality? Well, that's a very difficult one. I describe it as the inner world, and the technology is the outside world. And what I think is that those two are merging more and more. In the early days, you had religion and spirituality, and you had science. And what we today see with quantum physics, we can quantify what's happening in the spiritual world. So it gives us a language to describe what's happening in the spiritual world, and also to understand what is happening there. So I think the more we move into the quantum world and quantum computing, quantum the information transportation, quantum networks, the more we understand the quantum field, or consciousness, and how we can interact with that consciousness. So I think it will move us towards more interaction with the quantum field, or therefore higher realms, or whatever name you give it, whatever label you give it. So I think that these two realms are moving towards each other. And we see more and more technologies that are able to, for example, make a scan of your energetic body and measure if you have all kind of diseases or these kind of things. So the sensors and the AI are now becoming so sensitive that they can measure very subtle frequency changes in the field. So I think that the more advanced technology becomes, the more we understand that spiritual world, and therefore we more are able to quantify it and label it in a way that is for people accessible, and that's happening in a very rapid rate right now. So I'm very positive that technology will help us to understand the spiritual part much better, and that's also the subtitle of my book: Go Digital, Stay Human. So the faster we go digital, the more powerful technology we have, the more we have to go inside and decide, how are we going to use all this power? Because if we use it in a wrong way, it could be the end of humanity within a couple of years. So I think it's like a duality. It's like a contradiction. The more powerful technology we have, the more we have to go inside, and the more conscious we have to become how to use that technology. And I think that's the challenge that we have, especially in the next 10 years, during COVID and all kind of crises that come towards us. We have all the power, we have all the technologies to solve all the problems that we have, but we also have to develop the mindset. So we have to go to make that inner journey. And I think COVID is perhaps one leap, one step in that direction. People work from home, start to ask themselves, okay, what is life really about? Did I really enjoy my work at a big corporation, or do I want to become an entrepreneur or something and make the world a better place? So I think that conversation is going on with a lot of people at this moment. So it's a waking up process for people to start seeing what really matters in life. And I'm very hopeful that we will see a lot of more of that in the next 10 years.
Oh, so there is this whole conversation happening around the great resignation right now. So many people are leaving large corporates. By the way, I left a large corporate. I left a 28-year-old experience in the corporate sector in March this year to be on my own and do things that I want to do. I'm, coming to the realization that there is only so much time. This is my opportunity to do what I really want to do, the kind of impact I want to make on this world, and so on. So, yeah, I mean, that's a great example that you gave, and it's very close to home for me. Coming back to the other question, how do you define collective consciousness? Because you use that term, and I'm really keen to get into the depths of that conversation.
Yeah, I think everything in our universe has some level of consciousness, from molecules to atoms to cells. We have a body consciousness, so we are aware that we are here and we can interact with our environment. And I think our society will also have some kind of consciousness, and it's still in the early stage of development. But with each new wave of technology, we are challenged to raise our level of consciousness. Because if we are interconnected with each other, we can use it in a wrong way, like Facebook is doing right now for most of the part. But we can also use it for a good way, the beneficial way for humanity. So these technologies challenge us to become more conscious of our collective, because if we are highly connected 10 years from now using holographic technology, and we see people right straight in front of us in the same size as in the real world, and you cannot distinguish if it's a real person or a hologram, then we will have a completely different kind of society. We will collaborate. We will have instant empathy if we can look through someone else's eyes, for example. So I think that will help us to become aware, develop a more holistic view of our society, and therefore develop a more a global kind of consciousness, Earth consciousness. And that sounds a bit whooshy, but it's more of an awareness that everything is connected. We as human beings, we with nature, Earth, every ecosystem on Earth is connected to each other. And today we still think that we are some kind of super beings that are separated from nature. But I think with all the crises that are ahead of us, we will realize more and more that we are an integral part of other ecosystems. And before we understand that, if we don't understand that fast enough, we will destroy other ecosystems, and therefore our own ecosystem will also be destroyed. So I think it's collective consciousness is like an awareness that everything is one, is connected on an energetic level, but also on a material level. So that's, I think, the thing that we should develop on a global scale. Help people to realize that everything is interconnected and every action has a reaction. And today, all our reactions are in a remote country. So we buy products that are made in China, and all the pollution is done in China. So we are not confronted with it, but it's happening because everything on Earth is connected. So the more we use technology, the more the feedback loop becomes shorter, the faster we see that the harm that we do to nature. And I think that's where technology comes into play as a kind of mirror. It shows us how we behave and how we treat Earth, and it reflects on us back. And because we have many sensors in place, and that will grow exponentially in the next few years, we will see directly how our behavior influences the sky. Pollutions in the sky, pollutions in the sea, our rainforests, all these things. So the shorter the feedback loop, the faster we can learn, and the more we can become conscious of our collective.
That's a very, very good way to define it. Definitely, I think a very important point that you made about the fact that technology becomes a bigger enabler of the awareness that we are all connected, right? And acting as a mirror to show us that what is happening, whether good is happening or bad is happening, it's all there to see, which was not there if technology was not there. The kind of connectivity we have today was not there. And I think that's a big step in the history of human evolution, right? In terms of the opportunity to act as a common race for the benefit of the race and for the benefit of the planet, right? And that's there today, whether people realize it or not, and the choice is in our hands very much. So I wanted to now shift the discussion to the nature of, we've had this discussion around humanity and technology, the divide, and what it means from a collective consciousness perspective, from a governance perspective. And I want to bring the discussion back to, a slightly different topic around business and economy, right? I mean, given that we are seeing these technology waves, and there is this connectedness that is there, and this brings a whole lot of new opportunities for tech-based businesses and even businesses which are reliant on tech. Plus, because there is so much in the hand of the end consumers, do we see a shift in consumer behavior as well with these new advances?
Absolutely. Due to the internet and a smartphone, we become more conscious consumers. So if we buy a product, then we can see where this project originated from, who created it, how it's created, if it's done in a sustainable way or generative way. So more and more people are now aware of the products that they can buy. And you can buy it online at 1,000 different kind of locations. So, and if you have so many choice, then you start to choose, of course, the price is important, but also how it's made and what kind of principles have the company that produce or sell this product. So it's easier for people to choose. In the early days, you had only 2 different flavors in the supermarkets. And now you have 20 or 100 different flavors of a specific product. So you can also start to choose which product is made in a more sustainable way. And if it costs the same price, then you can choose that one. So I think today people become better informed. By the use of artificial intelligence and blockchain, we can make better decisions. We can research much better. We can share our research with other people, with YouTube videos, with podcasts. So people become more informed. And as we become more informed, we can make better choices. And I think that's also the feedback loop that we have. And the more powerful or the more collective that feedback becomes, the better choices we are going to make as a collective. To give you an example, it took us 60 years to discover that we have now plastic soup in our oceans with all kind of plastic materials that come into our fish, in our food, and in our own bodies. Today, we have Facebook. And if Facebook makes one small change in their algorithms, it can upset the entire world instantly. So we don't need 60 years to have that feedback anymore. So the more powerful technology becomes, the more instant we can make decisions and change our decisions. It's like having a steering wheel in a car. If you change or turn the wheel and the car moves very slowly afterwards, then you make a lot of accidents. But if the wheel reacts instantly and your steering behavior is direct, then you can steer between two lines and you can drive in a straight way. So we move from driving like this into driving like this. So we make changes, but they are small changes and we can move into the right direction much faster. And I think a good informed consumer makes a big difference here. So, and we see it everywhere around you. Why do people choose for Signal or Telegram instead of WhatsApp? Because they are informed, they know what's happening with their privacy, and they make a different choice. And the apps look all the same, and they behave the same, they act the same. So they start to choose from different kind of perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting and a very useful viewpoint. It brings me back to something you said earlier. We discussed a little bit about how people are relooking at the way we work, and I talked about the Great Resignation. I was just thinking that with that, and with the fact that the gig economy is catching up, a lot of people want to be working on their own. How do you see the future, and with the waves that you talk about, the technological waves, what does that predict in terms of the future of work? What is the future of work going to look like, and organizations for that matter?
Yeah, well, I think the same as the society of cells that we are. Every cell in our body is aligned with its purpose, and all the other cells are enabling that cell to do its work. So your heart cells can do their work because your lung cells or your liver cells are doing their work, and all is interacting and collaborating at the speed of light. I think we are moving to a same kind of society where everyone can start to follow its purpose, and all other people are helping that person to do that. So you become the center of your own ecosystem. To give you an example, our organizations are pyramids. Those are hierarchical structures. And the bigger the organization, the bigger the pyramid, and the slower it becomes. And but when an organization becomes slow, it cannot adjust fast enough to the changing ecosystem. And the ecosystem is changing very rapidly right now. So I believe that organizations are moving from hierarchical structures towards swarms, like swarms of birds, fish, ants, mammals. And those swarms behave like a fluid, big organism. And AI and holographic technology will enable us to build organizations as a service. So today it's very hard to run a business, to manage all the people, to motivate all the people. But what if all the people are motivated and helped by technology and put in the center of their own ecosystem? Like you are playing an instrument and you are put into a larger orchestra and you are part of a larger music composed by someone. And I think that the conductor that is putting everything in sync is like the AI algorithm. So I believe that organizations will become fluid, and everyone in the organization becomes some kind of micro entrepreneur. So a small entrepreneur, which is collaborating with all kinds of other people and does transaction using the blockchain, and everything is coordinated using artificial intelligence. So a complete different structure. But these organizations are by default very agile. They can adapt to the environment, to the ecosystem instantly. And I think that's what we need right now. Our world is changing so rapidly that the old dinosaur-like organizations that we have right now, those pyramids, those hierarchical structures, won't survive because they're simply too slow. And the only thing that they're chasing is purchase or more profit, like a dinosaur that is chasing food. And they grow bigger and bigger and become slower and slower. And then suddenly, if the ecosystem changes, they're not able to adapt. We've seen this with the dinosaurs. Due to the comet, the climate on Earth, the ecosystem changed, and they were not able to adapt. But mammals did. Mammals were much more agile. And today we see the same. And now it's not coming from space, but it's coming from cyberspace. So the internet changed our ecosystem, and these big organizations are not able to adapt. And therefore they will be, I think, extinguished in the next 5 to 10 years already. So we will see massive change, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I recently started my own work, and a lot of the people that I work with are freelancers or running their own small businesses, right? And they all come together for my center of the ecosystem to make it happen. And it seems to be working. And I was thinking about it, and I realized that around 10, 15 years ago, if I decided to do this, this would not work in this format. I still would need to have many more employees. And today I work, whatever work I'm doing in my company, I I just started hiring employees, but most of the work that I do, actually freelancers help me. So the model is indeed changing. From a large organization perspective, we've always seen that when the waves of change are there, there are a lot of these so-called dinosaurs that sort of get removed. But that sees the rise of the new age, new companies, which then again become large organizations, right? And there are organizations that do survive this shift as well. And I think one of the unique things about those organizations which existed before a wave, and then they continue to ride on the new wave, is the preparedness of the long term, right? And not just focusing on the short term focus, not just focusing on profit. Those are all important aspects, to focus on the planet, to focus on the environment, to focus on what is good for people, to focus on and be prepared for the next wave. And these organizations also need entrepreneurial pockets within their organization so that these new pockets can support that, right? I think that's where the innovation and how innovation is managed within organizations comes into the picture. I believe you've done consulting on that as well, right? I know I have done on that, and I've been somebody who's been working in that space. So there is some hope for these large organizations as well, wouldn't you say that, right? I mean, as long as they have elements of agility.
Yeah, but what I believe is just like with organisms, you can't save yourself, but you can't save your legacy. So dinosaurs were not able to change their own DNA to become a mammal. But what they could is create offspring. And that offspring grow up in a different kind of ecosystem, adapted to that ecosystem, and became more mammal-like. So what I believe is the only way that large organizations can continue their legacy is to create all kind of small startups. And we see this happening with, for example, Google or Facebook. Google Alphabet is a large group, a large swarm of smaller startups that are focusing on all kind of directions. And I think that's the one and only way for large organizations to survive. So they have deep pockets, they have a lot of amount of network, marketing network, sales network, they have global reach. And if they use that to create new startups and help those startups to grow, to nurture them, to cultivate them. I think that's the most, how do you say that? The best way for those organizations to continue legacy, not to stay alive and become older and more heavy and slower, but to create offspring and help that offspring to grow up. Don't give them too much power or too much money, because then they become lazy, just like children. Keep them agile and lean and help them to grow. And at a certain time, these offsprings will take over the job of the mothership, of the father. And I think that's just like in nature, should be the way how we continue as organizations.
That's a great analogy. I really like that. From a nature perspective, right? You talked about nature and technology. Somehow, in the last, ever since the Industrial Revolution, the conversation has always been around technological progress or industrial progress versus nature, right? And I think we are now at the cusp of a conversation which is happening worldwide, right? We're at the cusp of a process which has got initiated worldwide, that at least the conversation is happening about nature and technology, right? And I think that's also one of the themes that I'm taking away from our discussion today about how nature and technology can stay together. Do you have some final thoughts on that topic, nature and technology and industry?
Well, what I believe, we see ourselves separate from nature, but we are nature. We are biology. We are integral part of Earth, of everything that's around here. So I think if we stop looking at ourselves as a separation from nature, that's, I think, the biggest step that we can make. We are an integral part of nature. And technology, which comes out of humanity, is also an integral part of nature. It has a different form than biology, but it works on the same kind of principles. And if you read my book or my master course, then you will see that every technological discovery that we have was already be done by biological systems. So we are reinventing something that already exists. So what I believe is that we should look at nature again, because cells in our body already solved all the problems that we have as a society. Cells are here for 1.5 billion years, and they already solved all the problems in a very elegant, and sustainable way. And the only thing that we have to do as humanity is look at nature and look at nature, how they solve those complex problems. How do you collaborate on a large scale, not in hierarchies, but in swarms, because our body is also a swarm of cells that collaborate, all kind of small freelance cells that do their own thing, but that collaborate on the speed of light. So I think that's the big thing that we should have right now, a mind shift towards we are not separate from nature, we are part of nature, and we should act like that again. And we did it in the past. In the early civilizations, we were one with nature. We lived with the seasons, with day and night. But now we have separated ourselves in concrete cities, and we live at night. We have lights, artificial light. We have everything artificial. So we separate ourselves from nature. We create chemicals to heal our body. We don't rely on natural treatments anymore. So I think we are now at a turning point to see that we are so far from nature that we should return. Otherwise, we lose contact with nature, and that's, I think, the end of our civilization. So I think it's a very important point to realize for people that we are part of nature, and we should start to act like that. And I think the best way to begin is to look inside of yourself. What kind of cell am I? What is my purpose? Where I'm here for? And what kind of people should be around me to help me to thrive? And if we start to do that on a consumer level, on a civilian level, then change could be very, very rapidly.
Absolutely. It's just been wonderful having this conversation. So many topics that we touched, right from depths of technology to space exploration, multiplanetary society to being close to nature. And I think the final thing that I take away is that as long as we are taking decisions for the good of humanity, there will be naturally decisions which are for the good of this planet and good for nature, and therefore good for us. So thank you so much, Christian. It has been a very enlightening and very interesting discussion, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Hi, Christian. I guess I'm not seeing too many questions not seeing any questions on the window right now. My message to everybody who's who's watching and who's going to watch this later as a recording, I would request you to start writing your comments in the chat window, and while we may not be able to answer some of those questions live, we'll go back, look at those questions and respond over the chat window. So what do you think, Christian?
Yeah, if people have questions later on, please send them over, and I'm more than happy to answer them.
All right, and is there any other thing that we want to discuss before we wrap up?
I hope people enjoyed our interview and our conversation, and it gives them new inspiring insights about where technology is going, how it will affect society, organizations, and our personal lives. So again, I think we have a very interesting decade in front of us, and I hope people have a lot of about this conversation. It gives them some ideas of where things are going and how we can cope with all this change.
Absolutely, it is exciting times, right? I mean, I always feel, we're so lucky to be participating in all this, be part of all the developments that are happening right now. And the coming decade is going to be even more exciting in terms of the number of changes that are going to be there. So thank you so much, Christian. I think I had a great time during the conversation. A lot of, discussions always bring out new insights about the things that you were already thinking about. And I had that experience, and I hope you had that experience too. And I'm hoping the audience also has those aha moments of discovery and, new thought processes emerging in their mind related to these technologies and the science related discussions that we had. And also the discussion around nature and technology, science and spirituality. I think it was a pretty diverse discussion. I would say I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm wishing everybody a very good day, good evening, depending on where you are. And we'll be back once again at the end of, this is not the end. Every month we are going to have, these sessions. So we'll be back in December. Thank you.